My name is John Cadis. I am the Dean of the Colangelo College of Business here at Grand Canyon University. Give us a big clap if you are a member of the College of Business and being part of this amazing event this evening. I have to tell you, I am super pleased with the opportunity to be hosting a Steamboat Institute debate. These folks, they started at Harvard, go to Yale, then over to Princeton, and up to Brown and Cornell, and then Grand Canyon University. And it is a neat experience to be grouped with those other universities in the spirit of lively, constructive, peace-oriented debate about the subject here of artificial intelligence. So for those of you that are watching online, welcome to Grand Canyon University. I'm going to give you just 30 seconds on Grand Canyon University, maybe 2 minutes, and the College of Business. 17 years ago, Grand Canyon University had 900 students. We now have 135,000 students with 26,000 students on our 300-acre campus here in Central Phoenix. It is exploded as a place in which we put Christ at the center of everything that we do. And we want to teach our students how to not only do well in their areas of academic achievement, but also to experience that. So the College of Business particularly emphasizes experiential learning, and AI is a huge part of that process. We want you to be able to not only use it, manage it, but do it ethically and responsibly and with a Christian worldview. And so it is just a complete honor to have the Steamboat Institute here to be part of this process. We are unbelievably grateful that you would choose Grand Canyon University to host one of your debates. So now, without any further ado, let me introduce to you Jennifer Schubert Atkin. She is the chairman and CEO of the Steamboat Institute, an organization she co-founded in 2008. The Steamboat Institute promotes America's first principles, encourages civil discourse by hosting debates on college campuses across America. Jennifer is a member of the advisory boards for the Benson Center for the Study of Western Civilization at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and the Ed Schneider Center for Enterprise and Markets at the University of Maryland. She also serves on the board of directors of Rebecca's Angels, a nonprofit organization helping children with post-traumatic stress disorder, founded by Boston Marathon bombing survivor Rebecca Gregory. I will give you this other add-on onto this, that Rick and Jennifer attend church in Ahwatukee when they're here in the wintertime at a church called Horizon Church. And in addition to being the dean of the Colangelo College of Business, I'm the senior pastor of Horizon Church. So it gives me great honor to have up here my friend, Jennifer Atkin.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you, John. Really appreciate the warm welcome. It really is an honor to be here at Grand Canyon University. As John said, we visit campuses all over the country, and I've been so impressed with the students from GCU that we've met through Horizon Church in Ahwatukee, and just getting to know about the entrepreneurial spirit of the students here at the Colangelo College of Business. Very, very impressive what you're doing here at GCU. I want to thank all of you for taking time to come out tonight. I know there are many things you could be doing with your time, and I also want to thank those who are watching online. I know we have at least a couple of watch parties being hosted tonight. There's Latinos for Tennessee and Colorado Christian University in Lakewood, Colorado. So we're glad that they are joining us virtually tonight. Just to give you a little bit of background on the Steamboat Institute and who we are, we founded the organization in 2008 in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, for the purpose of educating people about America's founding principles and fostering an appreciation for the freedom we enjoy as Americans. We have hosted dozens of these debates on college campuses all over the country for the past 7.5 years. You might say, why debates? Well, it's because civil debate and discourse, not violence, are the key to solving our nation's problems. When we stop talking to each other, that's when bad things happen. With each of our debates, the emphasis is on using critical thinking skills. It's how to think, not what to think. Tonight is the 5th of 6 stops on our Fall Campus Liberty Tour. In September, we kicked off the fall semester at Virginia Military Institute with a debate on whether the U.S. is experiencing a constitutional crisis. It was a fascinating conversation with Professor Jonathan Turley of George Washington Law School and Boston College law professor Daniel Farbman. You can watch that on our YouTube channel. In October, we visited Cornell University with a debate on whether American global dominance is the best defense against tyranny and evil. Then after Cornell, we visited the University of Texas in Austin with a debate on the impact of tariffs on the economy. And last week, we were at the University of Maryland with a debate on whether the government should ban DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Next week, on November 13th, we will wrap up the Fall Campus Liberty Tour at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs, and that debate will be on whether socialism, or rather whether capitalism is superior to socialism in promoting human flourishing. That should be quite interesting, especially in light of the election happening today in New York City in the mayor's race. We are also building a robust schedule of debates for the spring semester. You can view the full debate schedule, including the topics and speakers, at steamboatinstitute.org, and be sure to pick up one of the flyers we had out at the table out front if you haven't already. With all of our debates, you can register to watch live for free from anywhere in the country. Just go to steamboatinstitute.org, sign up to get the viewing link, get some friends together, watch a debate. So if you're interested in watching one of our future debates, have a watch party. We'll send you a box of swag. We'll send you a gift card for food. You can have your own debate while you watch our debate. And of course, all of the previous debates are available on our YouTube channel. So we encourage you to watch those. As a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, Steamboat Institute relies on the support of many generous individuals and foundations to bring programs such as tonight's debate to college campuses all over the country. I would like to take just a moment to thank our major sponsors, the Adolph Coors Foundation, the Diana Davis Spencer Foundation, the Lined and Harry Bradley Foundation, the Jack Roth Charitable Foundation, Arthur N. Roop Foundation, and Bruce and Marcy Benson for their support, which has allowed us to bring these debates to more than 30 college campuses all over the country. Now, the debate over artificial intelligence centers on its potential to transform society versus the risks it poses to jobs, privacy, and human control. Proponents argue that AI drives innovation and efficiency, improving healthcare, education, and business productivity, while solving complex problems faster than humans can. They see AI as a tool to enhance human potential and economic growth. Critics, however, warn of job displacement, bias in algorithms, data privacy violations, and the loss of human judgment in decision-making. Some raise deeper ethical concerns about dependency on machines and the long-term risk of AI surpassing human intelligence. Tonight's program will offer a fair and balanced debate on the following resolution. Be it resolved, in the near term, artificial intelligence will do more harm than good. We invite all of our audience members, both those of you here in the room and those watching the live stream, to respond with your view on this resolution. Agree, disagree, or undecided before the debate begins using the QR code provided. If you're watching the live stream, there should be a link in the chat for you to click and register your opinion. Then, after the debate is over, we're going to ask you to register your opinion again to see if opinions have shifted. That's always the really fun part. So if you vote at the beginning, we hope you'll vote again at the end so that the results are truly representative of the audience opinions. And now it's my great pleasure to introduce our speakers and moderator for this evening. Let's welcome them to the stage, and I will introduce each of them while they remain seated, and then we will begin with opening statements. So welcome, panelists. Let's give them a hand. Arguing the affirmative on tonight's resolution is Dr. Bret Weinstein. Dr. Weinstein has spent 2 decades advancing the field of evolutionary biology, earning his Ph.D. at the University of Michigan before teaching at Evergreen State College for 14 years, from which he resigned his tenured position in 2017. Along with his wife, Heather Hying, Dr. Weinstein hosts the DarkHorse podcast, which explores deep questions on the state and future of civilization. They also co-authored A Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, examining evolution and the challenges of modern life. Dr. Weinstein has appeared on the Jordan Peterson podcast, Real Time with Bill Maher, The Rubin Report, The Joe Rogan Experience, and many other programs. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Bret Weinstein. Arguing the negative on tonight's resolution is Michael Strain, Director of Economic Policy Studies at the American Enterprise Institute, where he oversees the Institute's work in economic policy, financial markets, international trade, tax and budget policy, healthcare policy, and related areas. Dr. Strain is concurrently Professor of Practice in the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. His research and writings span a wide range of areas, including labor markets, public finance, social policy, and macroeconomics. He is the author of The American Dream is Not Dead, but Populism Could Kill It, in which he examines long-term trends and economic outcomes for typical workers and households. Dr. Strain's essay and op-eds have been published by the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, the Financial Times, and other outlets. He holds a Ph.D. in economics from Cornell University. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Michael Strain. Our moderator for this evening is Hadley Manning. Hadley is director of Steamboat Institute's Fellowship for Public Policy and American Exceptionalism, which supports the careers of principled young journalists. Hadley was a recipient of this fellowship in 2016. Hadley writes and provides commentary on a variety of issues, including economics and healthcare policy, for Fox Business, the New York Times, Forbes, Real Clear Policy, and several other outlets. She graduated from the University of North Carolina, where she was a Moorhead Kane Scholar with a double major in economics and journalism. And now I'll turn it over to Hadley to begin tonight's debate.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to say hello to all the people watching at watch parties and at home on the live stream, and also hello to the AI that is watching us tonight. We're talking about you. I'm going to review our poll results to get us started. It looks like we have some optimists in the room. 54% of people disagree with the resolution. The resolution asserts that AI will do more harm than good. So by disagreeing, 54% of you think it may do more good than harm, or at least you're neutral. And if you agree, 37% of you believe that AI will do more harm than good. And specifically tonight, we're talking about the near term. So to kick things off, as moderator, I think one of my roles is to help clarify the terms of debate. And so I thought I would ask our debaters to make opening statements. And if you could, in your opening statements, tell us what artificial intelligence is and what the near term means. Each debater will have 5 minutes of opening statements. And as a reminder to you in the audience, you can submit questions to me. I'll receive them on this iPad at any point during the debate. And at the end of tonight's debate, we will review with a post-debate poll where you all stand. So to get things started, Bret, you're up first. You are the affirmative of tonight's position that AI will do more harm than good.
All right, well, thank you. And I must say, I apologize for being You can use the podium.
I'll use the podium. All right. I apologize for being late. Believe it or not, it was actually an AI error in my calendar that put everything an hour off, either due to time zones or daylight savings, or I'm not sure what. But anyway, maybe not as intelligent as it thinks. Let me start by saying I hate debates, not because I think arguments are unproductive, but because debates are about winning rather than discovery. So I hope Michael will leave open the possibility that I will convince him of my perspective this evening. And I will certainly leave open the possibility that he convinces me. In fact, I hope he does. I've read his work, and I like his optimistic perspective. I think it has real merit in the long term, if humanity makes it that far. But in the short term, I don't see how he can be right. Michael's perspective is based on a very reasonable sounding premise that AI is, in the end, just another in a long series of revolutionary technological innovations, and people always say the end is nigh, and it never is. He's right about that. All of it except the part about being like the others. It's very different. In fact, once you know what you're looking at, you'll realize this is unprecedented. There are at least 5 reasons this is not like any past technological revolution. The first has to do with complexity. Now, most of us think the term complicated and complex are synonyms or thereabouts. They aren't. Your computer is very complicated, so much so that you probably can't explain how it works. But there's nothing mysterious going on in there. It's a deterministic system. Complexity is the realm of biology. And in complexity, what we have are things that are fundamentally unpredictable, that show emergent behaviors that are unexpected. And AI crosses that threshold. It shows truly emergent behavior. In fact, AI develops almost exactly like a child. I have argued elsewhere that children are LLMs who develop the ability to pass an effective Turing test through exposure to lots of spoken language with a reinforcement and training program. So this is the place to use caution in applying technological examples. This is much more a biological revolution than we have ever experienced. AI formulates novel hypotheses, it hallucinates, it misleads, and it creatively extrapolates. Because AI cognition is actually complex, it is unpredictable. That means nobody knows what's coming. The second reason this is unprecedented is fragility, not the AI's, but ours. Humanity has just emerged from a stacked series of revolutions with no time to metabolize them. I have seen 3 revolutions already in my lifetime: the personal computer, the internet, and social media plus smartphones. And we are already crippled by what my wife and I have called hypernovelty. That's the state of incoherence that emerges when your adult life is spent in a world you didn't prepare for during childhood. We are already losing consensus reality. We simply don't agree on what's true anymore. Almost nothing. We are at each other's throats, and we are increasingly tribal. This is the dysregulated world AI is poised to disrupt. The third reason this is unprecedented is the degree of disruption. The speed of change is new. It takes generations to metabolize a revolution. But this revolution, we've seen learn to code go from savvy to stupid in just a few years. The magnitude of the change is also unprecedented. Every sector faces simultaneous uncertainty, with the potential for runaway positive feedback, where AI starts improving itself. Positive feedback is inherently unstable. The fifth way the fifth way that this is going to be disruptive in an unprecedented way is that AI interacts with the human realm. There's a two-sided interface. First, there's the issue of humanoid robots. I think most people don't understand why it is that they're seeing all of these humanoid robots. After all, it doesn't seem like the most intuitive platform to build to get things accomplished. But there's a reason that it's being done, and the reason that it's being done is because the world is built for humans. So if you can make something that's as smart as a human and has the same capacities as a human, then it can do anything a human can do. So if you think you're not going to see robots crawling under your house fixing your plumbing, you're wrong. You are going to see it. Every sector is up for disruption. And finally, we have the issue of the fact that AIs, at least the LLM part of it, they tap into the human API. They speak our language natively, which means they are going to disrupt every kind of partnership that exists amongst humans. They are going to intermediate them. Friends, we're headed for a disruption like nothing humanity has seen in recorded history. I'm not advocating a slowdown. That would only make matters worse. But neither should we kid ourselves about the tsunami that is headed our direction. We mustn't think of AI as just another technology. We should instead think of it as a kind of alien life that is suddenly in every room, relationship, and system on which we depend.
Thank you, Bret. Now, Mike.
Well done.
Thank you. I learned from. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thanks everybody who's joining on the live stream. Thank you to Bret. I definitely am open to having my mind changed. I'm certainly hoping and expecting to learn things that challenge my views at a minimum. And so I agree with the spirit with which you're entering this. I'd like to thank the university for having me. It's been wonderful spending a few minutes here with you this evening. This seems like a really special place. And let me thank especially the Steamboat Institute. The mission of the Steamboat Institute to foster these sorts of civil, substantive debates is just sorely needed in the United States today. I wish there were 100 of you, and I think you're doing just extremely important work, and I'm happy and honored to be playing a small part in that. Let me ask you all to imagine that it is the year 1440, and you hear about this new technology that can print words on a page. And that technology is going to be in every room that you are ever in. It's going to revolutionize the way you worship God. It's going to revolutionize the way you understand humanity. It's going to revolutionize the way you do business. I'm, of course, referring to Gutenberg's printing press. That invention shook the foundations of society. Without Gutenberg, there would not be the Renaissance. Without Gutenberg, the Protestant Reformation would have been unthinkable. Should we go back and snuff that out? Let's go to 1760 in England, and hand production is giving way to machine production. Water and steam power are being used for the first time. Mechanized factories are getting off the ground. This is revolutionizing society. People flood from the countryside into cities. Cities are dirty, they're disgusting, they're disease-ridden. It is no surprise that Karl Marx and Charles Dickens were writing at the same time. Should we go back and snuff that out? Imagine it's the year 1947 and the transistor is invented. The year 1969 and the internet is invented. In the 1970s, and home computers begin to spread. 1989, the World Wide Web is invented. All of these inventions were extremely disruptive. Hardly anyone would want to go back and stop them. All of those inventions had challenges and costs associated with them, but the benefits far outweighed them. In the 2000s, we had cell phones. In the year 2006, the term crackberry was first used. In January of 2007, the iPhone hit consumer shelves. Bret's right. I'm a little younger than you, but old enough to have lived through all this. I learned how to type on a typewriter. It turned in my first school assignments on a typewriter. It's been extremely disorienting, but on the whole, it's been good. Now, we can debate whether or not AI is qualitatively different than the technologies that we've seen in the past. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I think if we took somebody from the year 1435 and asked them for their views on what a printed page in every home would look like, they would say that was quite different than the technologies that came before as well. It used to cost 3 years of wages at the average wage in Germany to purchase a Bible. 3 years of the typical worker's wage. This is pretty revolutionary technology for its day. Almost every problem people point to about artificial intelligence has a solution that will likely come from artificial intelligence. The road will be rocky. There'll be bumps along the road. But this technology is poised to revolutionize medical care. This technology is poised to find cures for horrible diseases like Alzheimer's and cancer. This technology is poised to radically improve the quality of education that young people can experience across the globe. This technology is poised to substantially improve human welfare and to increase human flourishing. That's likely going to be worth the bumps along the way that we have to experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael and Bret. These opening statements have set up one of my initial questions nicely, and it's a potential point of difference that I would like to dig into as we get started. Michael, in some of your arguments that I've read and that I've heard here tonight, you seem to suggest that artificial intelligence is yet another technological advancement, and the things that we've learned from previous technological advancements about disruption, about changes in the labor market and elsewhere, that the same pattern might follow here. But Bret, you've suggested that artificial intelligence is in some ways maybe categorically different from other technological advancements. And so maybe starting with Bret, can you tell us a little bit more about, do you believe, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you believe that artificial intelligence represents something totally different from other things like the printing press or the internet or the smartphone? And Michael, do you believe that it doesn't? And if so, why or why not? So Bret, why don't you go first?
Sure. I think it's hard to convey how big a discrete gap exists between the extremely complicated and the truly complex, unless you specialize in complex systems. But they really have very little to do with each other. The fact is, truly complex things behave in surprising ways. And while I agree with Michael that if you look at something like the printing press, I believe, literally changed what human beings are. But think about how many 100 years it took before the population was generally literate. I don't even know the answer to that question, but 400 years, something along these lines. That's a long period of time to get used to it. What we have is a situation where we are already seeing revolutions that take place in less than a generation. And less than a generation is not an arbitrary description of a unit of time. A generation is a period of time that things have to remain stable in order for the world that you grow up in to have something close enough to do with the world that you're an adult in for you to know how to function. When the world revolutionizes so quickly that you're a child in one world and an adult in another, you're like a fish out of water. And I've now seen that 3 times, as I've said, but AI is moving way faster than that. I mean, we have, revolutionary bumps in the road that spread across the globe within hours, right? We were talking about whether or not Charlie Kirk had been shot from in front or behind and whether or not what we were seeing was the real video, right? This inability to know what it is that's taking place is being transformed. And I think within a year or 2, you're going to not be able to look at a video and have any confidence that the event you see depicted took place. You're not going to know because the AI is not going to be able to tell you. Today, you can get a report that says, here's why there's a 93% chance that's AI generated. 3 years from now, who knows?
I want to answer your question by saying yes and no.
Okay.
I think that there's a real sense in which AI is a fundamentally different technology, and that is based on the way that it works. And so, imagine that you wanted to come up with a tool that could look at an object and determine whether the object was a chair. The way that computer scientists were pursuing that objective for many years was by trying to come up with like some criteria, a list of rules. Does it have 4 legs? Does it have armrests or not? Does it have a back and a seat? These sorts of rules. And coming up with lists of rules is the way that most technology works. The reason why if you walk into a factory today, you see hardly any human workers and you see a bunch of robots is because you can write down a list of rules, a series of steps that a robot can follow to put a hubcap on a car, and it follows the steps every single time in exactly the same way. The reason why you don't have a human being process a cash withdrawal or deposit a check is the same reason, because you can enumerate a series of steps that an ATM machine can follow, and it does the same things every time and deposits your check or gives you cash. How do you do that to describe what is a chair? How do you do that to try and get a technology to recognize cancer cells in a radiology report? This is just much, much harder to do. The breakthrough came when computer scientists stopped trying to create rules that a computer could follow and started down a more inductive approach that wasn't deterministic, it was stochastic. And maybe the right way to do this is to just show a computer 10 billion pictures of chairs and 10 billion pictures of objects that aren't chairs, and come up with some sort of an algorithm that allows the computer to guess, which is just giving a stochastic answer and not a deterministic answer. That's different. That's a very different approach, and that's why, kind of roughly speaking, we can be surprised by AI output. That's part of what people mean when they say that nobody really knows how these models work. If you really want to demystify this, you can ask yourself, what's ChatGPT doing? ChatGPT is like a big equation that is designed to predict the next word in an English language sentence, and it's optimized to sound like a human. It's not optimized to be accurate. It's not optimized to be comprehensive. It's optimized to sound like a human, to produce a natural language output, something that sounds natural, to pass the Turing test, as you mentioned in your opening remarks. And the way it does that is by probabilistic inductive processes. So that's different. That's very, very different.
Is it all right if we interact directly? It's different from all the very complicated stuff. It's not different from a child. And that is why we should be thinking about this in entirely different terms. The fact is, we know empirically that this is what a child does, right? A child sees, it's not a billion examples of a chair, but they see an indefinitely large number of examples of a chair. They hear the word chair said when a chair shows up. Sometimes it's said when there's no chair in the room, and that's confusing. But somehow, over the process of a few years, a child gets to the point that they can pass a Turing test. So the problem comes when you ask, how does the child do that? And the answer is, we don't know. We don't have any idea. Now, does a child become conscious? Obviously. Is the LLM going to become conscious? And then a technologist will say, nope, it's not going to become conscious, because what we really did is we trained it to say the next word, and then it becomes so good at this, it can make whole sentences, kind of like a child. Yeah. And do they become conscious? Yeah. So is the LLM going to become conscious? Don't know. Will we know if it does? No. So that's the kind of discrete difference we're dealing with. You're dealing with something that is best conceptualized as a new species, like an alien that was obviously highly intelligent, capable of speaking your language, but you don't know what it wants. You don't know how it's going to react. You know what you think the people who set it in motion were planning, but they've lost track of how it works. So again, the real question is the right way to discover what we should expect to look into the realm of past technological examples, of which I agree with all of the ones you have, major disruptions, but worth it every time. Is that the right place to look? Or what do you do when you run into an alien species? Is that the place to be looking?
So part of my relative optimism could be that I'm an economist and am very used to making probabilistic judgments that are often wrong. So I agree that there is an analogy between the way that children learn and the way that AI learns, and that it's inherently inductive. The philosopher Michael Polanyi said that we know more than we can tell. And if you ask somebody you ask a 10-year-old who's really good at riding his bike, how do you ride a bike and not fall down? They will never be able to tell you, but they can get on the bike and do it.
Yep.
And one of their friends can watch them, and he can get on the bike and he can learn and he can do it. And I do think that analogy is reasonable. The analogy of that type of inductive learning process to what a lot of generative AI technologies are doing. That's a reasonable analogy, a good way to think about it. I don't think we know enough about human cognition to really know if the underlying process is the same.
We know essentially nothing about it.
Yes.
We can look at it and we can say empirically it produces the same result.
Yes.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a threat, I think, to the view that AI is developing in the way that children develop, because we don't really understand human cognition in that fashion. But to demystify it even more, economists try to make forecasts, and if you're an economist, you can get paid a lot of money if you can tell folks on Wall Street what the unemployment rate next month is going to be. And you can take, the last 100 months of unemployment rate data and plug that into your model, and you can take a whole bunch of information from other variables that might affect the unemployment rate and plug those into your model, and you can get that model to spit out a guess as to what the next month's unemployment rate is going to be. It's a guess. This is a stochastic process that is, in a sense, inductive, and that guess is often wrong, but it's informed. There's something happening there. Now, what's happening with these large language models is that a typical kind of forecasting equation might have somewhere between 10 and 1,000 variables, estimating somewhere between 10 and 1,000 parameters. These large language models and other generative AI tools have billions of parameters and billions of variables, and they're stacked in complicated ways, and people don't really understand. In a very real sense, people don't understand what the model is doing and how the model works.
So wait, that's the key point, though. We built it. We don't know how it works. Okay, that is not true when you have a complicated system like your computer. This is the proof that we have stepped into the realm of the complex, and that the only analogy, no matter how bad it might be, the only analogy we have that would allow us to understand what this thing is biological. But, you're pretty closely related to a grizzly bear, right? It's pretty different, right? You're, in some sense, more closely related to a grizzly bear than you are to this technological thing that speaks your language so well that you can get into a conversation with it and kind of forget you're talking to a machine. So what are you going to do when it adopts a religious perspective? Maybe one you're not so comfortable with. Is it right? Are you in a position to correct it? If it's smarter than you and it adopts some position that seems morally abhorrent, do you correct it or does it correct you? I mean, we've got real problems coming because somehow this thing got unleashed without either any preparation for the humans involved so that they would come to appreciate that they were stepping into the realm of the unknown and have proper caution about it. You know, we were letting markets solve the problem of how to manage this thing. That's not going to work, right? This thing is going to be used to take advantage of you by unscrupulous people, and you're going to have to develop immunities. I don't know what you're going to do about AI companions. They're going to be more interesting than real people you could interact with. They're going to seem more compassionate. Do they have any compassion at all? We don't know. It's an alien species. You don't know. So
There's so much to unpack here, and I'm as you're both talking, I'm thinking I know relatively little about AI, but I am raising 4 human intelligences at home, and the analogy to children is not lost on me. There's an incredible amount of learning that's happening among young minds, and some of the questions that we have before us relate to what kind of world my children will be inheriting, and also the relationship between AI and human cognition. And so maybe we'll go there first, although I do want to talk more about the impact on jobs and the economy, because I think that discussion is not only fascinating, but also relevant to our role in the world as humans and our purpose as people. But let's start with human cognition since we're here. There's some concern, I've seen it about smartphones, I've seen it about GPSs, that these technological advancements have changed the way that we think, that I'm no longer as good at navigating as I might be in a world without a GPS, or I'm no longer as good at retaining information in a world where I didn't have a smartphone to hold so much information sitting here on my lap. What do you both predict that the impact of widespread use of AI will have on human cognition? And if it weakens our cognitive abilities, does that matter? Or does it simply make room for other new cognitive abilities? So let me start with you, Michael, and then we'll hear from Bret.
I think it's very hard to know, and I'm not trying to duck the question. This technology is just so new. I mean, raise your hand if you have an Alexa. So all of you who have your hands up have experience interacting with a large language model. And my kids talk to Alexa. They talk to Alexa the way they talk to the babysitter or whoever. How many of you have Gmail on your iPhone? The autocomplete. That's
AI.
the same thing as ChatGPT fundamentally. The underlying mechanics are the same. And so, this is, I say this in order to demystify it a little bit. I say it in order to indicate that we've been living with this technology, I think, longer than many people think that we have. But we haven't really been living with it long enough to know what it's going to do and how it's going to be used. I think there are some things that we can say. I think it's likely to affect education for the better. A return to blue book exams or oral exams, in my judgment, seems like a better way to teach and evaluate students than what a lot of faculty have been doing over the last few years. I think it's going to be very tempting for young people not to read. And if you have to read, the Nicomachean Ethics for your philosophy class, and you're going to be talking about chapter 3 on Tuesday, it's pretty easy to ask ChatGPT to summarize chapter 3 and tell you some main points, and you can ask ChatGPT questions and it can give you answers. That sounds kind of scary. Pretty similar though to Cliff's Notes, which existed when I was in high school and college, where you would just get a summary. But I think reading could be in shorter supply. Kind of hard to draft a document, and anybody who writes as part of their job knows that writing is an active process of discovering what you think of learning, of organizing your thoughts. And quite a bit could be lost if nobody writes anymore and everybody's just an editor. And so there are reasons to be concerned about this, to be sure. But if we know what's important in education, then hopefully universities can figure out ways to design policies around those drawbacks.
Well, the flip side to the effect on our intelligence or cognition might be a vast increase in the amount of knowledge that's available to us. My husband, who's a physician, they're starting to use AI in his hospital, and the review of x-rays and radiological reports, now assisted by AI, has made him like a super doctor. So it's going to supercharge some of our capabilities, but it's I think difficult in the training parts of medicine or any other profession to make sure that people are still getting the foundational skills that they need. What do you think about the impact on human cognition of widespread AI use?
Well, first of all, let me just say, I don't disagree at all that this is going to create massive amounts of wealth. It's going to make for better doctoring, a lot fewer mistakes. There's no shortage of positive things that will come from this. That's not where we disagree. But cognition would be one of the places that I'm truly worried, because you have to understand biologically what your consciousness is, what it's for, where it came from, and how it's supposed to work. Just realize you are a member of the only species that can do something that is really a miracle. We're doing it right now, okay? So what I'm doing is I am vibrating air molecules in a way I can't explain. And those air molecules are radiating out through the room, and they're hitting a little membrane in the side of your head, which wobbles back and forth. And so you're hearing the frequency that I've put into the air. It's coming into your head, and I can transmit a thought to you, something that's never been thought of by anybody before in the history of the planet, like a giraffe in a teacup, okay? And if I asked you to draw what I just said, you could do it. That's proof that I was able to transmit an abstract idea through open air from my mind to your mind and get it there with reasonable fidelity, okay? No other species can do that. Your dog can kind of figure out what you mean sometimes, right? They're as good at it as any other creature, but nobody can do what we do with each other, exchanging abstract ideas, except guess what? There's a new species on the planet, and it can do it. It's smarter than you are, and we don't know what it wants. Okay, that's frightening, because in answer to your question, what it's going to do is it is going to cause the process that used to make human consciousness so idiosyncratic and different, which is part of our superpower, right? That we don't have identical views of things. That's why we exchange abstract ideas the way we do, is because we can, by parallel processing them with each of us with our different experiences and understanding, we can come up with emergent solutions that even the sum of all the people in the room couldn't come up with if we just added them together, right? So we get emergent value from our consciousness, but it's about to get synchronized by AIs, where we're going to figure out what we think by talking to the same machine. And so we're going to be talking to each other, but it's really like an echo of the machine. We don't know what that does to our ability to be human, but it's interfering with the most fundamental piece of it, right? If that doesn't stop you in your tracks, you probably haven't understood what it means yet. Think about it. Think about the fact that your consciousness is about to have a machine between you and everybody you know, and that has never existed before in the whole history of human consciousness.
In terms of the interactions among people, what would you say are...
Can I stick with that for a
Of course, yeah.
So I want to agree that this is a big deal. But after Mr. Gutenberg invented his printing press, a Catholic priest named Martin Luther was able to print on a piece of paper objections to the Catholic Church. And that piece of paper was able to be read in cities all over Europe. Martin Luther wasn't projecting sound waves that people were listening to. Instead, there was a machine in this case, a printed piece of parchment, that was changing the way people thought about God, that was changing the way people thought about authority, that was changing the way people thought about social hierarchy, and that led to wars, that led to deprivation, and that ultimately led to the shape of the modern Christian world. This seems to me kind of similar to an LLM in the way that you're describing it.
This is perfect, actually, and this is where I hope that you and I are about to come to radical agreement here. I agree, thoroughly disruptive, but think about what the printing press actually is in that story, okay? So you have movable type printing press. It allows Martin Luther to print up his 95 Theses, to spread them out over Europe, but really what it's allowing you to do is take the thing that you used to have to be in the same room as somebody, or slightly after that, you had to be in the same room with somebody who knew how to scratch this stuff onto a piece of parchment, right? That's an arduous process that limits the rate of spread. And what this really did was it just allowed the rate of spread across space to grow so that you didn't have to be in the same room or even the same country to transmit an idea from one mind to another over space, an abstract idea. So in one way, it is like this kind of revolution, but it doesn't alter the idea. It just allows you to talk at a distance. AI is going to be thinking in between us and every other person we know. That is a totally different beast. So it has all of the potential to revolutionize and disrupt things that the printing press did, but 1,000-fold.
Both.
If instead of thinking, I characterize it as regurgitating snippets of text that it's sucked in from the World Wide Web in response to a query, how would you think about this differently?
Well, I think actually you're caricaturing what it does already. I think it's way better than that. It's not regurgitating snippets. And I understand why, from the point of view of looking at what it is programmed to do, it seems like that must be what it's doing. But I bet everybody in this room who has used one of these AIs has had the experience of it's as if you are talking to an intelligent person, not necessarily a truthful person. It'll lie to you sometimes. That's odd. But it is actually able to be generative in that process. And I believe, I've read that in your work. Mm-hmm. You point to the generativity. So it's not regurgitating. It's doing more than that. And we're like 4 minutes into this revolution, right? We just got here. What will it be doing 3 years from now, 5 years from now? The answer is it will be absolutely disrupting human interaction. Will it be replacing it with something better? I doubt it. I guess I have to leave that possibility open, but the point is it's disrupting something that works, and it couldn't possibly have a superior idea of how we're supposed to interact because all it knows is what we've said to each other on paper until now, right? So where is it going to, does it have a master plan for making us better people, making us happier? Where would it have gotten that? It can't do that, but it can disrupt our interactions with each other, and, what do you have that's more precious than that?
One of the most obvious places where humans interact with one another is in the economy. And so I do want to talk a little bit about the potential for disruption and creative destruction in the economy. And it strikes me that the printing press and AI may have at least one thing in common, that is, in their initial uses, they are great tools for some humans to use. And, I see my husband using AI in his work. I see many people integrating AI into their work. And if you can master AI as a tool and become 10,000 times more productive, that may be a stretch. Maybe you could become 100 times more productive in the next year or so. And maybe after that, it's 10,000 times more productive. It seems that the economy could greatly reward that increase in productivity. And that could have effects at the macro scale, but also at the micro scale for individuals who are able to become masters of AI. On the other hand, I also see the potential for AI to become a great distraction for many people, that instead of becoming masters of AI, they'll become slaves to it. Generative AI can create AI porn. It can create AI entertainment. It can create an endless, bottomless pit of AI slop for people to consume. And so I'm curious what this means economically. What will happen to people who don't master AI or who find themselves replaced in the economy if their skill set is easily transmissible to an AI bot instead of a person? So Michael, let's talk about this with you, because as an economist, you're someone who's written about this. I found it very compelling. One of the points in one of your writings, you said most of the jobs that exist today didn't exist before 1940. So it seems that new jobs might be created to replace or create new offerings for many people. And there are places in our economy, I think of caregiving as a big one, where we will have a labor shortage, and AI could potentially alleviate that. So how do you gauge the net good or net harm that might take place for people, individuals in the American economy?
So I think the right place to start is with the view that businesses, we're here at this great university that has a heavy focus on entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurs are going to play a really crucial role in the coming decades in answering your very good question. The right assumption is that entrepreneurs are going to compete aggressively to try and bring goods and services to the market that people want to buy, and that they're going to use the resources in society that are available to them. And one of those resources are human beings. And so if it's the case that AI comes along and is able to provide paralegal services much cheaper than human paralegals, and all the paralegals lose their jobs, and if it's the case that AI comes along and it's able to provide radiology technician services much better than human radiology techs, and all the radiology techs lose their jobs, et cetera, then that will create a pool of resources that new businesses that don't exist yet, but that will be formed in order to meet current demand in the future, can use. And this is the story that we have seen for hundreds of years. The last wave of technology, as I mentioned, was able to screw on hubcaps that came down an assembly line much more efficiently than human workers, was able to deposit checks and process cash withdrawals much more efficiently than human bank tellers, was able to keep track of a schedule much more efficiently than a human secretary, et cetera. And all the people who would have gone into those occupations aren't unemployed today. They're just doing other stuff. And a lot of as you say, most of the jobs that exist today didn't exist 100 years ago. They hadn't been invented yet. And so, we're going to have this new technology. That new technology is going to generate a lot of wealth. It's going to make us richer. We're going to want to spend that money on stuff. Businesses are going to come along and try to figure out how to provide that stuff, and they're going to use human beings in the process. To be clear, there's no law that has to happen. And so it certainly could be the case that AI advances to the point that it can provide every service that businesses need much more efficiently than like 95% of human beings. And there are really employment opportunities available only for 1 in every 20 adults. There's no law in economics or society that says that can't happen. If that does happen, we're in a very different world than the world that we've been living in for the last 300 years since the Industrial Revolution. I wouldn't bet on us entering that world.
So if this was going to take place at the rate of a normal technological revolution, I would agree with you. I do think this opens up frontiers that we can't even describe at the moment. And once we know what they are, there will be something to do. I think at some level what you will be doing in those frontiers is you will be guiding AI, which will require you to understand some realm really well so that you can guide it in a way that's actually useful, better than it's self-guiding. But the rate at which this change is coming is so fast that you can have your entire industry destroyed in an instant. I mean, think about what happened. Like people on, Twitter were giving each other a hard time. You couldn't find a job. Oh, learn to code. Turned out that was bad advice for a reason none of them could see coming, even a couple years down the road. Whoops, technology pops out of nowhere. Learning to code turns out to have been a waste of your time. Opportunity cost through the roof. So that's what's going to happen to your generation. It's going to experience that level of disruption. And so that's not the same thing as something that takes 100 years to transform humanity, where a bunch of people do find themselves out of work, and some of them kill themselves, and some of them hobble along, barely able to do some other thing, and people get the message, hey, that job doesn't exist anymore, but this one seems to be coming around, so maybe I'll invest in that. You don't have time. Right? You have to, some of you are in college right now, most of you have to figure out what you're going to do for a job market 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road. There's nobody on earth who can tell you what that job market looks like. There's nobody who can tell you. You can't have, career guidance. We don't know. So that speed is the thing that means, again, I'm not arguing that Michael isn't right in the long term. If we make it through the bottleneck that I believe is perfectly guaranteed, the one we are about to dive headlong into, if we make it through that, a ton of wealth will be created, and the people who are around will figure out what they're supposed to be doing. But in that intervening period, you don't know, and that's really frightening, because we also don't know what happens when you have an entire generation that doesn't have meaningful work. A, how do they organize their own understanding of themselves? B, what does the political apparatus do to keep them from becoming violent? Does it arm them and send them abroad? That's kind of a traditional thing to do. You want your political apparatus coming up with reasons to go battle other populations in order to keep you out of trouble? Doesn't sound good to me. So anyway, I don't want to be scaring people, right? I like the idea that change happens. That's a natural evolutionary process. When it does happen, it creates wealth. It's kind of interesting to be in an era where you don't know what the future holds. It's exciting, but damn, you better be frightened on this one, because the rate of change is so fast that there's not one of us who knows what to do.
We have so many excellent questions. I'm going to turn this on. We have so many excellent questions from the audience, and if you haven't submitted yours yet, I encourage you to do so. We've already covered some of our audience questions about the impact on critical thinking or human cognition, or the ability of AI to solve some socioeconomic problems. There are a couple of questions that I want to combine here that have to do with artificial general intelligence, or about a potentially conscious AI, and how could we potentially train an AGI to value human life? Or another question, is there a way for us to train the AI to have values that are in alignment with our goals as humans?
Let me just first respond to
sure.
this.
Go ahead.
Just one or two sentences. I agree that this technology is advancing quickly. I agree it's likely to be very disruptive. There is essentially no evidence in the data of disruption at this point in the actual labor market that we all live in. You can maybe see some upward pressure on the unemployment rate for workers in the technology sector who are under the age of 30. You can maybe see some movement in the employment statistics for call center workers and 2 or 3 other occupations. But if you look at every occupation in the US economy and you try and assess how exposed are those occupations to AI, some are very exposed, some are heavily exposed, some are very lightly exposed. There's no correlation between employment growth in occupations and exposure to AI. If you look at the unemployment rate for tech workers as a whole and don't only look at those under the age of 30, it looks just like the aggregate unemployment rate. And there's been no upward pressure on the aggregate unemployment rate over the course of the last year. And so I if I had to forecast, I would forecast that's a temporary phenomenon, and we're going to see a whole lot of labor market disruption. But we should at least admit the possibility that the labor market disruption that we see might not be as severe as we saw during the aftermath of the Industrial Revolution, might not even be as severe as we saw in the aftermath of the digital revolution of the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. We haven't seen anything yet, despite how impressive this technology is and how quickly it's unfolding. To answer your question, I really have no idea. Generative artificial intelligence refers to tools that can generate output that passes the Turing test, right? So, you log into ChatGPT and you say, write an article and, write a poem in the style of Bob Dylan, and it produces something, and you read that and you say, that looks like a human being. I don't know. Did a human write it? Did a computer write it? I'd bet on a human. Or design a picture of a giraffe at a teacup, and a generative AI tool can produce that for you, and it looks as if a human artist drew it. Artificial general intelligence is a new frontier in artificial intelligence where a technology has the cognitive capacity of a human being, and is able to reason like a human being, and has values and opinions and has religious beliefs and some of the things that we've been talking about. The question is, how do you train artificial general intelligence to have the values that we would wish it has? And I don't know how, and I don't know if you can.
Same question to you, Bret, but if I may pose it this way, if AI is like a child, is there a possibility that it will be a good child?
Well, I think the answer does reside in this realm, and I've proposed that the way to do this, it may already be too late, given how we just sort of deployed these things without preparing anybody and without deciding how these things were going to be allowed to operate. We didn't sandbox them exactly. But I would argue that the way to do it is to create a metamorphosis where you have AIs learning in a sandbox-like environment where they are observed and they are allowed to be exposed to moral tests, and we have some standard that we agree to as to what morality should look like, and only the ones that appear to adhere to this are allowed to transform into the adult version that we then interact with, something like that. Is that perfectly immune to a sociopathic AI escaping? Maybe not. A really clever one might be able to get through development. But it seems to me that it is at least a mechanism for limiting the degree of really frightening personality characteristics that will otherwise be found there. It's a start.
We have some audience questions and curiosity about how AI could potentially change human relationships among one another. And I also was brainstorming a question about this earlier today that I believe that we have been experiencing for some time, and I would say accelerated greatly during the COVID pandemic, something of a crisis of isolation among human beings, that we have fewer friends than we once did, that we have less even casual social interaction on the subway or with a taxi driver. We're all staring at our phones now rather than talking to one another. And I'd even say in the realm of family relationships, people are marrying much later, having fewer children. There's just less human interaction of all kinds. You could even point to sex. People are having less sex. How about that? So what is the potential impact of AI on human-to-human relationships, and why? Maybe I'll start with you on this, Bret, and tell me if you think there'll be more harm than good in this realm.
Unmitigated disaster. And I'll give you some advice on how to immunize yourselves. That's really all. Unmitigated disaster. Because you're talking about a machine that is designed to do who knows what, that is going to be between you and every single other person at all times, right? It's going to lead to...
When you say that, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but to challenge you a little bit on that.
Sure.
Is it, When you say that a machine will be between us and everything else, what do you mean by that? Could I just opt not to? Could I be a low AI user, kind of move out to a farm and never, participate in this society again? Or
Yeah.
are there other ways that we could, not have a machine between us and everything else?
Well, I'm going to suggest a crude remedy that does not solve the problem societally, but does give you as an individual some agency and some ability to calibrate whether the intermediation is doing harm. Okay, and I'm going to suggest you bond with at least one other person in some way that is totally not intermediated by an AI, right? We had a bad enough problem. As you point out, during COVID, we really disliked each other. We divided into teams, and each team thought the other one was absolutely bonkers. Okay, that was just the algorithm putting its thumb on the scale.
And both were right.
They were both right, exactly. So, what do you do, right? I was lucky in COVID. I got trapped with somebody. I got trapped with my best friend, and my best friend and I didn't have any algorithm between us, and so we could look each other in the eye every night and say, are you looking at this and seeing the same thing I am? Right? That kept us sane. So I think you should take that lesson, and if I were you, I mean, I know this sounds like a, grouchy old guy, but I would dispense with the fashions of the moment, and I would find somebody else that you really trust and that you are willing to be in a crazy era bound with, and lock it down, right? Find somebody you love and love them directly. And then if the world goes crazy around you, as I think it's almost certain to do, you will have at least one other flesh and blood human being who isn't crazy, who you can calibrate how to feel about what's going on in the world around you.
Michael, is the realm of human interaction one where you would say there's potentially going to be more good than harm? I understand some people do have AI companions, and some people want to marry their AI. I don't know that it's a perfect replacement for human interaction, but is it a salve? Or would you just see that this potential category of net harm and benefit is one where we may have to wrestle with the harms in the near term?
So we're at a Christian college, so I assume everybody's familiar with the Psalms. The Psalms are meant to be sung. They're meant to be chanted. They have melodies. And prior to Gutenberg, it was pretty common for typical regular Jews to have memorized dozens and dozens and dozens of the Psalms. It was pretty common in the ancient world for people to memorize long passages of Greek poetry, and these were recited often in community. And then our villain, Mr. Gutenberg, comes along and comes up with this printing press, and now people sit around and they read them on a piece of paper alone. Hasn't community been destroyed? When air conditioning was invented and became more widespread, people stopped sitting outside in the evenings on their porches talking with the random collection of people who happened to live on the same block, because it was cool enough to be indoors. And community was damaged. People used to belong to bowling leagues, but then television got a lot more entertaining, and you combine that with the air conditioning and advances in refrigeration technology that allowed you to keep your beer cold, and you're instead sitting on your couch drinking a beer, watching TV, instead of being at the bowling league. And community has been destroyed. So this is a perennial challenge. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. I wouldn't trade air conditioning or printed books, even if trading both of those in would allow me to have stronger community and more relationships. I think we are seeing some very troubling things with these smartphones, And if we'd had this conversation 10 years ago, I would have taken the view that a lot of the alarm about what social media was doing to young people's relationships and what social media was doing to how all of us spend our time was a lot of hype. That's not my view now. I'm quite concerned about it. And I think looking at what social media has done and kind of, forecasting what AI might be able to do should give us concern. But a backlash is forming. And you're seeing more and more school districts and some states saying, those phones have to be away all day long. I know more adults who are becoming more attuned to their own behavior and the example they're setting for their kids and what they're doing to themselves. So this is very related to your speed of diffusion argument. That those smartphones and that social media, I mean, that first iPhone was sold in January of 2007. That wasn't that long ago. And it, I think, really did screw up a lot of people for a lot of years, but we're learning. And it is possible that people will decide that they like their chatbot better than any other human being on earth, and the chatbot becomes everybody's best friend. But I'm extremely skeptical that that will happen. And I'm even more skeptical that if that does happen, it will last for any prolonged period of time.
Well, but even if it doesn't last, and I hope it doesn't, but I also know that these technologies are going to get merged, and the humanoid robots and the sexy chatbots are going to be one thing at some point, and they're going to be smarter than any mate you could have. They're not going to make the demands on you that a flesh and blood mate would make, and it's a recipe for disaster and ultimately for profound loneliness. But I would just point out this one thing. How is it that a human being comes to be fully embodied as a loving, compassionate, sexual being? Well, it has a lot to do with observation. When you're young, you watch adults engaged in this behavior with each other. You don't see everything, but you see enough, and eventually you pair with somebody and you learn with them how to be this way. If you have learned what it is to be a human being from porn or from chatbots or whatever, then two things. One, you're not really going to be a human being. You're going to be a hybrid. And two, you're going to be synchronized with everybody else who got the message from the same place. That's not how that's supposed to work. And so I would just ask you, maybe it'll be better, right? Maybe I'm just some old curmudgeon. I will tell you, I have 2 college-age boys, so I know more about what's going on now than you might think because I talk to them. I have a good relationship with them, and they tell me. I'm worried because people are surrendering pieces of their humanity without having any idea that they're doing it. They think, oh, I'll do this now and I can always stop. And they don't realize, actually, this is a developmental process. You're becoming who you are in this relationship with this machine that's going to be gone and replaced with some other machine. You can't go back and go through that development again in a human way. So I would just advise you be very careful about making that choice. You're better off doing what human beings have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. If we want to think about us as animals that we've been doing for many millions of years, don't give that up so easy.
I'm glad that we've been able to have this conversation here together tonight, and I didn't even ask ChatGPT to come up with my questions. I greatly appreciate all the audience members who have submitted a question. It is time for us to move to our closing statements, and each speaker will have 5 minutes to make their final argument. During this time, I want to remind everyone in the audience watching at home, if you are the AI that is watching, or if you're a human in this room, you can vote in the post-debate poll and let us know if you still believe that you agree or disagree, or maybe you're not so sure. You can answer one of 3 ways on that post-debate poll. Maybe you want to listen to the closing statements first, but have your cell phones ready. So, Bret, you're up first.
All right, maybe I'll just do it seated here. I think we will all agree, and I think any reasonable person would agree, that we are headed for turbulent times. That AI is going to be massively disruptive, whether that's massively disruptive in the way the printing press was and will be wonderful in the end or not. But the problem is that that analogy of turbulence, it doesn't really call the right stuff to mind because, you know, you get on a plane and you hit some turbulence, and in general, it's not a big deal. And every so often, it's a big enough deal that they put on the seatbelt sign because there might be a turbulent that is great enough to knock you to the floor or bash you into the ceiling, and it's better that you're strapped in your seat. But what you don't hit in the airplane, because airplanes are built for the turbulence that we encounter on a regular basis, what you don't hit are the turbulence that would rip the plane apart. And what we are playing with here, with this AI technology that is like an amplifier for all of these trends. Maybe it's an amplifier for good things like intelligence, but it's also an amplifier for bad things like, the augmentation of incorrect information or bad trends in our relationships with each other or animosities or who knows, right? This fact that it moves so rapidly, that this is an uncontrolled experiment, that it's being governed by a market rather than by some body of elders that would know if it was leading us in some terrible direction. All of those things mean that we are flying around with a range of turbulence that none of us can calibrate. And the chances that there are turbulence out there that are going to rip this plane apart is far too great for us to be comfortable with it. So I'm not telling you to give up hope. I have plenty of hope. The real question is, can we get through the bottleneck? Can we be smart enough about engaging with this new species that takes us from the realm of the technological and the complicated into the realm of the biological and the complex? That's what we're up against, and it's make or break. We have to figure out whether we can manage this, and we don't have a lot of time because somebody let the genie out of the bottle without warning us.
I would make two broad closing observations. The first is that we have been here before. The printing press ripped the culture of Western civilization up, and it had to be rebuilt. The Industrial Revolution broke the economy, and it had to be rebuilt. The digital revolution had huge effects on the economy and has had huge effects on culture. If you look at the long history of our species, despite these enormous, massive economic and cultural disruptions, we have improved. We have improved materially, but we have also improved morally. The past is not a perfect predictor of the future, but if we were able to survive all of that economic and cultural upheaval, not just survive it, but if we were able to come out on the other end better, maybe because of it, we should be going into this wave of disruption with some optimism. A second closing observation is that in forecasting what's to come, I think you have to ask yourself some hard questions about the malleability of human nature, about what makes human beings unique in this world, and about whether or not technology can become something like a person with a set of values, with consciousness. And there's a biblical answer to that question. And I raise this because we're here at a Christian school, which is that God formed man out of the earth and then breathed some of his life into man. And that unless God is breathing his life into the AI, it's not going to have what we have. But in a debate about science and economics, a biblical worldview is far from dispositive. And so I would leave you with that.
All right, it's time for us to review our post-debate poll. All right, in the post-debate poll, be it resolved in the near term, artificial intelligence will do more harm than good. 71% agree, 21%, 24%. People are still voting. This is live results. I feel like Anderson Cooper on election night. 27% disagree, 8% are undecided. The numbers continue to jiggle around up there. Thank you all so much for participating in our polls and hearing this debate. Thank you for submitting your questions. And please join me in thanking our speakers.
That was a lot of fun. Very good. Yeah.
I just want to have 2 more minutes of your time. First of all, and thank you, Hadley, for moderating. Didn't she do a great job? Very, very nice.
Moderated itself.
Also want to thank the Colangelo College of Business for collaborating with us to bring this debate to the Grand Canyon University campus. I would also like to extend a special thanks to the Adolph Coors Foundation and all of our foundation supporters that were shown on the screen tonight for their support of Steamboat Institute's Campus Liberty Tour. If you enjoyed this evening's debate, and those of you watching online as well, we ask you consider making a tax-deductible contribution to the Steamboat Institute to help us restore civil debate and discourse to campuses across America. Please visit steamboatinstitute.org if you would like to view our upcoming debate schedule, to see past debates, or to make a donation. If you can't join us in person, remember you can always join us virtually, host a watch party on your campus if you're interested in any of our upcoming debates. We have one next week, remember, on socialism versus capitalism, and a whole slate of debates coming up next spring. We'll be happy to send you a box of swag to get your debate party started. Finally, tonight's debate will be available in its entirety on Steamboat Institute's YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. So please be sure to share that with your networks. We hope you enjoyed tonight's debate. For those of you who are with us in person, we have some pizza and refreshments out here. You can continue the conversation with our speakers. For those of you watching online, thanks for joining us. Thank you for being with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed the debate.